It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the Winona State Warriors head women's soccer coach, Coach Jill Leibforth. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to get started in coaching in college women's soccer?
That's a great question. It kind of fell into my lap, I would say. I think that my college playing experience was a little different than maybe other players. I did have quite a few injuries, so that forced me to kind of transition out of that, at least competitive playing into a different role. I knew I still wanted to be involved in working with student athletes. I knew I still wanted to be in the collegiate world. I just didn't know what that looked like for me at that time. But I ended up starting my master's program at Loras and started as a volunteer coach, and then kind of worked my way up into full-time assistant. And now here I am, head coaching my own program.
What was that like, obviously going to Loras to play collegiate soccer?
Loras was great. I think that it was definitely an excellent experience for me. They're a very successful program. They have been for quite a while now. So going to Sweet 16s and Final Fours, and that's an experience that a lot of people don't get. So for me, that was incredible. It taught me a lot. I learned a lot, but I also feel like I really grew as a person.
As a player, what was that like going to those Sweet 16 moments?
It's indescribable, really. I think that you don't know till you get there, and then you see it, and there's the lights and the banners and the advertising and the fans. It's just a completely different experience, and you really feel like you're in the spotlight, and you get to, perform on the biggest stage with your fans and friends all there. And I just think that there's no other place like those tournaments, because you really feel like you're in it. You feel like a pro. You feel that the stage is set for you. So really, it's all about that competitive mindset and keeping it fresh, and staying focused throughout those moments too as well.
As a player, what was that like getting to put on that jersey and represent that university?
It was awesome. As a freshman, it was a little intimidating, I won't lie. As it grew into it, it became an honor, always an honor. But like I said, I was injured quite a bit throughout my career. So anytime I did get to put on the jersey was an amazing feeling. And like many other athletes say, it's just an honor to represent something bigger than yourself.
Of course, with you battling through injuries, what was that like battling through injuries and also making it to the biggest stages like the Sweet 16 for women's soccer?
It can be tough. A lot of injured student athletes that I work with, I tell them it can be a lonely road, because although you're still part of the team, you still feel some type of disconnect, because, you're not physically stepping on that field with them. I did my best to play the role that I could in those moments. I did get injured right before our Sweet 16 travel. So that was unfortunate, because I really kind of had to adapt on the fly and figure out, okay, if I can't physically compete in this Sweet 16, how can I still contribute? And whether it was, making sure that everyone has their stuff, or just making sure all the equipment's there, little things that make you still feel like you're a big part of that stage.
Of course, during that time, did you get to compete in the Sweet 16? And what was that like competing if you did?
Unfortunately, I did not. I was injured, but I was, there on the bench with my teammates and cheering them on. It's it's still a surreal feeling, I think. And I do think, looking back, that that probably was my first taste of coaching, so to speak. I was more of, a student coach role at that point. But I will say that, I still feel like the feeling is pretty similar when you're there in the moment. You hear the whistle blow. All the sensory experiences are still there, but unfortunately, you just don't get to step right on the field with your teammates.
Of course, after your collegiate playing career, what was that like getting in coaching and first coaching on the high school level?
The high school level is interesting. I think that it's different everywhere, but especially in Iowa, there's, a vast spectrum of high school soccer competitive levels. And that's just what it is, but you have to make the best of it in every situation. So we were very much a small private high school, and we were competing on the largest stage with, a lot of those public schools that have, 1,500, 2,000 students. So to be able to compete on that level and stay in the game and have your name still talked about and get to the state tournament was huge. And I think for me as a coach, that was a really pivotal moment in my growth. I realized that there's a lot more that goes on than students, athletes realize all the time. And whether it was, providing food after the game or scheduling buses or scheduling games, all of that comes into play. And that was a really good Kickstarter for my coaching career to be able to say, I've done this, I buses, handled all the logistical things. Now we just need to focus on, playing and getting to state, really.
What was that feeling like getting to coach on the college level for the first time and going to Don Hawkins?
It's been great. I think my first experience, I was absolutely nervous. I had a great mentor who really kind of pushed me, but also provided that support and in case anything went wrong, they were there. He was there to make sure that everything went well. But at the end of the day, he gave me a lot of freedom and a lot of support to run things how I wanted and a lot of autonomy, and gave me a voice, which I think was huge for my coaching career, because you don't really know how to do it until you do it. And you can't really find your coaching until you start doing things. So the first time he told me to give a pregame, writing a script and all of that stuff. But as you continue to do it, practice makes everything a lot easier. So now I'd say I'm an old pro at, speaking to a team or getting in front of people. But at that time, it took a lot of growth. It took a lot in me to kind of put myself forward and make sure that I was not only a confident voice, but, a supportive and motivating voice as well.
As a coach, what was it like getting to go to the Division III Final Four as a coach versus obviously when you were able to make it as a player?
As a coach, it's amazing. I think that you watch these student athletes put in day after day, practice after practice. They stay late, they show up early. It's really about the culture that you create and the culture that you can, thrive in. I think that we had some gifted players, no doubt, to get to those Final Fours, but at the end of the day, I think that it was our togetherness and our culture and the environment that we had built that promoted competition, promoted, the extra work, but also promoted fun. I think that fun is a very overlooked element of success. We all think that fun needs to go out the window when we're getting serious or we're competing. It's not true. I think that fun is a very essential part of the game, and you have to keep people motivated, keep myself motivated. And a lot of times fun is a really good way to do that.
Of course, what were some of the things that you learned as an assistant coach to then help you to become that head coach that you are today?
It's a good question. Really, I think that what I've learned is getting to know the student athletes as humans before athletes is an essential part of coaching. I think that's really what the foundation of success is built on, so that, any challenges that arise, any communication issues that come up, we already have the set foundation of a relationship to say, okay, this may be a misunderstanding, but that I care for you as a human. Same thing, coming the other way. So I think setting that standard of a good, healthy, communicative relationship is really important, in organizing your team and getting them to gel and setting that stage for this is a team effort. This is teamwork. I'm a part of that team, even though I have a different role, but really just setting that foundation, I think, is huge.
Of course, during your time as an assistant coach on the college level, what was that moment like when you realized that you wanted to take that next step in your career to become a head coach?
It was, yeah, again, it was a process just the same as when I started as an assistant. I think that there's definitely a learning curve to go through, experiences, and you just kind of have to accept that there's going to be some moments where you don't know everything. You don't know what you don't know. And to adapt a growth mindset, trust the process, and really just try your best in everything that you do was a big pivotal moment. I didn't know if I was ready to be a head coach. I didn't know if I wanted to be a head coach. I think at that point, my academics were really important to me. They still are, but I've realized that we can have both. We can do both, and learning curve for sure, but I've been having fun while I've been doing it, and it's been successful, and it's been an excellent experience and an excellent point of growth for me that I really think I needed to take that next step in my career.
What was that feeling like getting to come to Winona State to become the next head coach for the women's soccer program?
It was a great feeling. I think that it was obviously there's a little nerves and everything, there's a little anxiety, but if you manage that and you take time when you need it, I think that the opportunities are endless. And I'm incredibly motivated to work with this group. We had a great year this year, and I'm very excited about what our future holds. And I think that, being a part of Winona is an amazing place. I mean, it's beautiful here, but the community is really what gets you through everything. Our athletic directors, other coaches, student athletes, even student support staff have all gotten me to the point where I can feel like I can be successful in this role. And without them, I don't know that happens.
As a head coach, what was that first feeling like getting to step on the Winona soccer field?
It again, nerves, right? Anxiety, but I think that it's all about, kind of shifting your mindset and adjusting that mindset to, while you want to remain competitive and you want to win at the end of the day, it's not all about winning. There's a lot of takeaways and things to be learned from those experiences. And I think you just kind of got to appreciate the moment, as hard as that might be. And kind of, I remember looking at myself in the mirror and just saying, you got this. You've coached 100 games. Like it's no different. There's a different level, there's a different stage, there's different people, but soccer is soccer. And I'm not asking, no one's asking me to do anything I'm not comfortable with. We're not asking them to do anything they're not comfortable with. So let's just go play soccer.
What did the typical game day look like for you as a head coach versus for your Winona players?
Good question. For me, game day is pretty much just about keeping the routine going. I do definitely have a game day routine. I like to go get my coffee. I'll come to my office, get some stuff done, just kind of, keep getting things done, checking things off the to-do list. And then once, 4-ish hours hit before game time, then I'm starting to get locked in. At that point, I've pretty much done, all the prep work. We've done our homework, we've watched film, we've done all those things. So unless there's a, you know, last minute change, there's not much to prepare for on game day. I'd say a lot of that homework is already done. But it's all about keeping a good vibe, keeping a good mindset, keeping people relaxed. I think the worst thing you can do is just get everyone tense, right? And if I'm tense, what does that communicate to everybody else? Everybody else is going to be tense. So for me, keeping it cool, having my coffee, enjoying the day, knowing that at the end of the day, it's 90 minutes, and what happens, happens. We're going to go put our best effort out there and going to do our best to win. But as many coaches know, it doesn't always roll that way. And you kind of have to be prepared for either one, for it to go either way. I always say, act like you've been there before, whether it's winning the national championship or, losing a really hard game. I think that if you act like you've experienced that before, you don't let all of those emotions take over in that moment.
Can you talk about, of course, the culture that you've built for the women's soccer program?
I think, yeah, we've really focused on our togetherness and our culture. Culture is kind of a phenomenon that everybody wants it, but no one can really define how to get it. And I believe that really looking at a culture is dependent on the pieces of the culture you have. Um, Culture elements that worked at the last school I was at may not work here, and that's okay. But I think culture is, rather than a destination, it's an everyday process. It's something that we need to incorporate as a coach, as players, into our practices, training sessions, strength and conditioning, game day, of course, but in every element, why not build that culture and that togetherness? And that only pays off in the big games.
Who are some of the teams that you compete against each week?
Each week in the Northern Sun, we have quite a bit of competition. We are a 15-team conference, so we do play everybody once, and we have some of the best teams in Division II soccer. Bemidji State, recently had a great run to the Elite Eight. Minnesota State Mankato is always great. There's so much good competition in this conference that it's really an honor to be able to coach besides some of these individuals, but it's a motivator as well, because you really want to take over that NSIC conference and know that you've really established yourself in the Division II world.
What is that like, obviously going against some of those teams like St. Cloud State and playing them at home versus going to Wayne State College and playing them away?
Mm-hmm. Away trips are always tough, I think, especially in this conference, because we do travel quite a bit. There's pretty far games. I think 9 hours is the furthest, but that's a long time on a bus, and it's a long trip to fit in a weekend. So I would say playing at home is definitely an advantage. I think that we've become a team that is a force to be reckoned with at home, especially. On the road is always tough, coming off a long bus ride and then waking up early, you're not sleeping in your own bed. So there's a lot of things that go into it, but at the end of the day, I love playing at home. I love playing away. But I think there's, obviously advantages to home. You can have your family and friends there. You can have the school support there. It kind of turns into, a fun activity for the community. And away, you don't get that same support because not everybody can travel that far.
What is that like, obviously having that home crowd and that home atmosphere when you're playing teams like SMSU and St. Cloud State?
The home atmosphere is big. I think you see it a lot at college sports games, how intense the crowds can be, how intense the fan base can be, and that can rattle other teams. It's true that the fans yelling in your ear can get in your head. Now, we do our best to deal with all of that and work through it, but there's no doubt that fans can obviously play an influential role in the game. Whether it's whatever it is, you get the football team out there, that's 100 guys, you get the volleyball team out there, that's another 25. So you really build that crowd to chant your name the whole 90 minutes, where, other schools are trying to do the same thing. But I think that creating that home environment is another piece of that culture.
Of course, as you talked about that, what is that like, obviously having where soccer is more of a spring sport, where you have those football players that are in their off season, and you have those players like volleyball that are in their off season to come cheer for y'all and support y'all?
We're actually in the fall at Winona, so we do play in the fall, but I think that makes it even better, because then, volleyball is also in sport, football is also in their season. So it's very easy for them to come out to the field and say, oh, we're going to go after practice, we're going to go head over to the soccer game. And, that's our team activity for the week. So not only does it help us, but I think it helps build the entire Winona State community as well, because we're warriors supporting warriors, right? We go to each other's games. And again, that all comes back to that culture, that even recruiting, right? If you bring a recruit to a game and there's 500 fans there, that's a really cool stadium element to play in, as opposed to having one or two fans in the crowd, right?
Of course, what are some of your coaching accomplishments as the head coach?
This is just my first season at Winona, so I don't have a ton of accomplishments yet. I will say that we did make the conference playoffs for the first time in quite a few years this year, which was huge. I will say that, we did it, by ourselves. We didn't have a ton of help. I didn't have a full-time assistant. So getting all of that done is a huge credit to the athletes that we have here. Nothing would have been accomplished without them. So for them, they had all conference honors and all those great things. But I think that our ability to kind of get through this season together as a first season, as without a full-time assistant, that's a huge accomplishment in itself. But some accomplishments in the past that I've had, regional staff of the year, conference coach of the year multiple times in the American Rivers Conference, coach of the year honors for our high school conference. So, there's a few awards in there, but I'm definitely looking to get more here.
What does the recruitment process look like for those prospective student athletes looking to play college women's soccer?
It kind of varies. I think it depends on what level you want to play at, what your academic interests are, and maybe what your post-grad plans would be. I think that if you're looking at nursing, that's a completely different pathway than a business major. So depending on that, I would definitely consider all of those factors. But I would say that, get in front of the people or the schools that you're interested in. If you have no interest in a school, don't waste their time, right? You don't want to waste their time. They don't want to waste your time. So I think that really getting in front of people that you want to be in front of is huge for the college recruiting process. And then stay open. I think there's many student athletes or prospective student athletes that are set on one way or one division or one school. I think keeping your options open is a much better approach, just to be able to say, okay, I've seen A, B, C, and D. What did I like about this? What did I like about that? Different elements of the school are really important as well.
As a head coach, what are some of the things that you look at in those recruits when out on the road?
Good question. I think that most of all we look for, obviously you want, the biggest, fastest, strongest, most technical players at your school, right? That I think all coaches would agree. But there is a piece of finding that culture fit as well. I think that, you got to make sure that they'll fit in with the team, fit in with our goals, our standards, all of those things, whether that be academically or, team-wise, statistics-based. So from that perspective, I would say I definitely look for the talent, absolutely, but you can also tell a lot about body language and attitude when recruits are on the field. What do you do in the first 3 seconds after you lose the ball? Are you walking and letting someone else handle it? Are you trying to get it back right away? Those are all pieces that are really important of the recruiting process as well, because I think you can tell a lot. If a team goes down 2-0 and you start seeing people go like this and the body language is not there, then that indicates that maybe you're not, as resilient as you could be, or as mentally tough as you could be in those moments. So those are definitely some of the extras I look for when recruiting.
Of course, during the official visit, what does that look like for those prospective student athletes coming to Winona?
It's different for everybody. I think most schools would have different processes as well, but we obviously do the tour, want to show you the facilities. We'll have lunch with the team, kind of hang out, get a good feel of what Winona State looks like. And then if we have, prospective student athletes that are interested in a major, they can go check out classrooms, meet with professors. We do have our recruits meet with our student athlete advisors, which is huge on the academic side because they're really going to be your support from an academic perspective. So meeting all of the right people, but also having that balance of this is what Winona the school is like, and then this is what Winona the athletic department is like, and kind of molding those two worlds to see, get the best of Winona in, a day's worth.
As a head coach, what is it like seeing those freshmen get to put on that jersey for the first time and represent Wyoming?
Yeah, it's always a good feeling. I think the first time they step on the field for them is like I can put myself back, 10 years ago. I was nervous for sure. But once they get over it, you see this look of relief, like, okay, I did it. I stepped into the game. I hung with some college players and I didn't, get my butt kicked. And that's a huge step in the learning process for a lot of freshmen. So just seeing them, be able to achieve their dream, they've done it, they've made the college roster, but then there's the next goal of stepping on that field and they just continue to meet those goals. And that's what coaching's all about. It's about preparing them to compete and then preparing them, for life after sports as well. So I think that that's a huge milestone for me to see, because a lot of that prep work goes into making sure that they're physically ready, but mentally ready as well. So it's always really rewarding to see them step on the field and love it, and then they just, the anxiety goes away and they're just playing soccer.
How is that feeling going to feel like as a head coach to see them as those seniors get to put on that purple Wyoming jersey for the last time?
It's bittersweet, right? I think while I would love to keep them for another 4 years and continue to grow, I do think that there's a piece of it's time, right? It's time to move on and it's time to go to grad school. It's time to, jump out into the world and start to experience other things. But um I will say, upon reflection, I think that a lot of student athletes take this period of their life for granted sometimes, and they don't realize it until they come back on alumni day and they say, man, this was such an influential time in my life and I loved it and it was great. So for them to be able to, spread their wings and go, I'm so excited for them. I'm so happy. But it is sad. You never want to see, your team leave, especially you recruited them for a year or two and then you had 4 years with them. That's a 6-year relationship, right? And even beyond that. So it's hard. It's hard to, see them go, but it's amazing to see what they do out in the world and represent, our program and themselves and the school as well.
As a head coach, what is it like seeing those players go on and make it to the NWSL and even the national team?
It's so cool. I don't think it ever gets, it doesn't ever get old. I really think that they work their butts off to get there. And then, as we said, they just keep reaching those goals. So heading from one level to the next is not easy at all. But those who make it and those who get it done it's incredible to see, especially considering, they've put in the same amount of effort to their academics for the most part for the last 4 years as well. And to still be able to climb that level and succeed on that level is just, it's amazing. It really is.
What are some of your future plans for the soccer program moving forward?
I think that, winning is always fun. There's a lot of coaches that make fun of my coaching philosophy because it is to win and have fun. And on the surface level, it sounds very childish and elementary, but I think that if you break it down and you're having fun and winning at any given moment, that's what it's all about, right? I think that you can win and not have fun, and that's not always a great experience. And you can have fun and not win, and then you feel like we're not getting much done here. But if you have both in those worlds, I think that that's what, winning and that culture and success is all about is we have both of it. We're having fun, but we're also winning. So by and large, we're keeping most people happy, which allows them to look back on their experience as successful and motivating and a good stepping stone for them to kind of step to their next step, whatever it is.
What advice would you give those high school athletes looking to become college soccer players?
I would say, again, get in front of who you want to be in front of. If you have no interest in a certain level or a certain region, area of the whatever the US, I think don't go to those showcases. I mean, I know clubs, you have to go wherever you go, but don't waste anybody's time. They won't waste yours. I think college coaches deal with rejection almost every day, and it's not new. So from a student athlete or prospective student athlete standpoint, if you're not interested, just be honest, you're not interested. But really, do the things you have to do, get in front of the places that you want to get in front of. If you're not interested in staying local, go to those further away showcases where those teams are at. It's really all about who you can get in front of and that exposure, for the most part. And then, ID camps are huge. Don't go to ID camps that you're not interested in. Go to the ones where you want to be seen, you want to be a remembered figure in front of those coaches. And, when you follow up with that email or your campus visit, they know who you are. They've gotten emails from you. They've seen you at their ID camp. So they're going to be, ready to tell you this is a good fit or it's not. And again, it's about, not really wasting anyone's time and being honest and transparent and getting you to where you want to go in the most successful way possible.
What advice would you give those soccer players that are looking to go to the next level in professional soccer, whether it's the NWSL or even represent the U.S. women's national team?
That's a good question. I'll be honest, that's not really my wheelhouse. I don't have a ton of experience in those worlds. But again, I would say do what you have to do. Look at those players that you've heard of or that have gone to that level, who've made those strides or who've represented those clubs, and ask them what they did, how they get there. A lot of times it's, again, going to be the exposure and who you can get in front of. But repeated exposure is also important. And then I think putting in the work in the off time, behind those closed doors when nobody's watching, right, is when you really can grow and take those extra steps that not everybody else, your competitors, are not taking. And I think when you do those things and you get in front of the right people and you play for the right clubs and those things, that gives you a much better pathway to get to that level, as opposed to someone who's purely focused on making a college roster.
What advice would you give those athletes that are looking to get into coaching right after their collegiate time?
Coaching. I would say, as an athlete, learn, as much as you can about coaching. Ask your coach what a daily schedule looks like. Ask your coach, how do you plan practice? All of those things I think can be overlooked. I've definitely worked with some assistants who didn't realize that, and then they got to the point where they had to run a drill or give a pregame talk, and it wasn't them, and that's fine. It's not for you. But when you're starting out at that volunteer level, I think set yourself up for success so that when you get to that volunteer position or that assistant position or even head coach, you know what's expected of you. You know what your daily schedule is going to look like. And a lot of times it's a lot more than athletes think it is. But that's kind of where, the piece of come hang out in the office, see what I do all day, follow me around for a day, in the off season and in season, because those can be two different worlds as well. It's not all just, staying in hotels over the weekend and playing soccer. There's a lot that goes into it, especially on the recruiting side. Making sure that you're running a program efficiently, budget, all of those things are frequently overlooked. But if you can get some experience with it before you're, thrown into the water, I think that's makes the landing a bit smoother, when you do get that head coaching job.
Of course, what advice would you give those assistant coaches that are looking to become head coaches and run their own program?
Put yourself out there. There's a lot of comparison in not only the soccer world, but the collegiate world and in all sports. There's always going to be someone that has, that's at a higher division, that has more awards, that has a better winning record. But you don't know until you put yourself in that situation. You don't know what you're capable of until you make that jump. And it can be scary, and it's there's a learning curve, and you're gonna forget things and you're gonna not know things, but it's all part of the process. And I think it's so important for growth. If this is where you really want to be, if you want to run a college team, then you got to practice running a college team, right? Unfortunately, there's no trial period or you know, whatever it is that you have to jump right in. When you're hired and then you get to work. So I think, same thing, just getting into the world, prepare for that next step. As much as you follow your head coaches around, let them, ask them if you can do some stuff, ask them if you can look at the budget, ask them if you can, talk to the travel partner to get our hotels set. All of those little things that assistant coaches, don't necessarily have to do depending on the program, but I would say take over that responsibility when you can, so that when you get to your actual head coaching position, you're an old pro, right? The things that you need to know, and sure, there will be differences in what bus company you use, but at the end of the day, if you have experience, I think you're a lot more confident in yourself, to coach that team and run that team.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you at on social media along with the program at?
Yeah, the program is just Winona State Sock at Twitter. Same thing on Instagram. And then myself personally, I am just Jill.Leibforth on, Instagram, Twitter, all of that fun social media stuff. Not the new ones like Be Real or TikTok. That's not my world. But you can find me on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook.
Thank you again, Coach Jill Leibforth, for your interview, and best of luck in your future with the Winona State Warriors women's soccer program.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Britain, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Coach Jill Leibforth, for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
Thank you.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.